In our program tonight with recitation of Fatiha.
Recording in progress.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Ar-Rahman. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Alhamdulillah, summa alhamdulillah, all praise to Allah SWT, salawat and salam to our Prophet Muhammad SAW. And alhamdulillah, we are very fortunate tonight. We have with us Professor Datuk Dr. Osman Bakar. Currently, he's a holder of Al-Ghazali, Chair of Epistemology and Civilisational Studies and Renewal. And Prof. Osman is an emeritus professor of philosophy from Malaya, the chair of professor and director of Sultan Omar Ali Saifuddin Center for Islamic Studies, University Brunei Darussalam, and Islamic philosopher. He is a fellow at the Center of Civilisational Dialogue at University Malaya, Doshisha University in Japan, and a former president of Islamic Academy of Sciences of Malaysia. Prof. Osman was included in the list of 500 most influential Muslims in the world several times. Apa khabar? How are you, Prof. Osman?
Well, Alhamdulillah.
Okay, tonight yes, Prof.
No, I hope everyone is well, especially you are the moderator tonight.
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. Okay, tonight we continue our intellectual discourse or tripartite intellectual discourse online, number 48. Actually, we begin during MCO when we cannot meet physically. Then we thought even after MCO, why not we continue, because we can reach our audience beyond the certain boundary, physical boundary. Tonight, we're going to discuss very important topic where our Prime Minister's Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim launched this Madani concept, and is how we're going to develop a tamadun based on Madani. And there are several, of course, views, constructive and also criticism from both sides. Some says this is really very good based on Din Tamadun, based on the Madinah Munawwara, but also we have a comment that Madani that is based on John Locke, secular perspective. So we invited Prof. Osman Bakar to discuss detail, because he's known the subject matters very well, and he knows Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim very well. So he's the best person, the right person for us to listen and get the advice. So without further ado, I would like to invite Professor Datuk Dr. Osman Bakar. Tafadhal, Prof.
Shukran. Alhamdulillah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wa mursalin Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, dan salam sejahtera. Selamat malam. Thank you very much, first of all, to Professor Datuk Fauzan for inviting me to speak tonight on this topic. For the topic, of course, I choose this topic, but roughly he told me what are the issues that being raised following the Madani, the Malaysia Madani policy, government policy introduced by the current Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim. So based on what he told me regarding some concerns, some some queries, or some just contested positions on Madani. So I thought I come up with this topic. The main title is just Madani. It is a general term here. It is not referring in particular to the Malaysia Madani. Yeah. So basically, in fact, tonight, what is important is for me to explain the concept and philosophy of Madani, the theory of Madani, especially as put forward by the philosopher, Muslim philosopher Al-Farabi, sometimes in the 10th century of the Common Era. So that's why I will be make a lot of references to Al-Farabi, because notwithstanding the contribution of Ibn Khaldun, I think on certain aspects, many respects, actually, none after him surpassed his exposition of the concept. Of course, it is related to civilization, but I thought that for tonight, since some raised the issue of whether Madani is a religious or secular concept, I think I will concentrate on that. So the idea is that with that explanation, with that exposition of the concept of Madani, then we will be better to appreciate why Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim choose Madani, not the Madani as in their totality as discussed by the Muslim philosophers, the Muslim intellectuals in the past, because we have to understand that Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim wants to apply all the good values about the Madani to the specific context of Malaysia. I think that is a very reasonable thing for him to do. I mean, in fact, the concept and falsafah and the philosophy of Madani, any Muslim country is free, is is encouraged to apply this Madani to his or her own country. I think that's important. So we in others, for the political program, for the policy, the government policy of Madani to succeed, then it must be strengthened by the concept of Madani, the philosophy of Madani, as explained by Farabi and other thinkers, Ibn Miskawi and Ibn Khaldun and others, other lesser thinkers. So I think that's my introduction to the to my presentation. I have prepared some slides. I hope as pointed out by Professor Fauzan, maybe I'll speak about 45 minutes, and then we have a discussion. All right, that's what I will try to do, inshallah. All right, now all right. Yeah. All right, let me now go to my first slide here. First of all, I think it is only proper for me to explain the meaning of the Arabic word Madani. So my slide here, I said origin of the Arabic word Madani. What is the origin of this word? How did it originate? So I come to two types of origin, two kinds of origin. One is etymological origin, which therefore related to the Arabic language itself. And we know what etymology means going to the original meaning of the word, and knowing the structure of the Arabic language. In other words, it is very helpful to go back to the root word. What is the semantic feel that is being conveyed by the word Madani or its roots. And the other one, of course, is conceptual meaning. Sometimes, in any language, sometimes the etymological meaning can be the same as the conceptual meaning, the concept, but sometimes they are not the same. So in this case, let us see the etymological meaning of the word Madani. Now, based on the root words, in other words, the two root words, the second root verb, which is Madana, which is the conveys the meaning to found or build cities. So therefore, Madana is related to cities, and that's why we have the word city, Madinah, or to build cities and to also to civilize. And of course, this is a contested term, especially in modern times. We know very well that the West, during a particular era, during the colonial period, wants to civilize the rest of the world. But here we are talking about being within the same culture, with the same society, but still there is this mission to civilize. So it's not civilizing others, but civilizing oneself, because one's community. Yeah, all right, and then to urbanize, to humanize, to refine. These are the key words conveyed by that word Madana. Then you have the fifth form, Tamaddana, then after had Tamadun. Yeah, the Tamaddana is to be or become civilized. Again, the question of civilization appear, and then the noun Tamaddun it conveys the meaning of urban civilization. In Malay language, okay, in case of Indonesia, they prefer makan peradaban, salam tamadun, but in Malaysia, we use both tamadun and peradaban to mean civilization. But to be more accurate, especially as used by Farabi himself, yeah, tamadun refer to urban civilization, to the material civilization. Yeah, so in other words, this is a different, say, from Umran that uses Ibn Khaldun. Yeah, this is the question of Umran, Hadara. These are all words related to civilization, but they are not really the same in meaning. There are some fine distinctions. So now the word Madani itself is used both as adjective and as a noun. So as adjective, for example, the word Madani conveys a wide range of meanings, and therefore the question of the usage of this word, which meaning, that has varied, that has changed during history. So, but we know very well, as Arabic dictionaries will tell us, yeah, Madani, it means urban, urbanized, civilized, refined, polished, civil, and also even secular. Okay, so that's why, for example, say in the modern Middle East, among the Arabs, for example, the word Madani is used in a secular sense to mean, say, civil society, yeah, civil society, masyarakat Madani. So masyarakat Madani among the Malays can be interpreted into different ways. One interpretation is carrying a spiritual and religious meaning, but the other one is purely secular. So therefore, what we have now in our two possible understandings of the word Madani, two interpretations. Therefore, we have to see the context. So this is as far as the adjective. As noun, we have city dwelling, town dwellers, citizens, civilians. Yeah, as different from the military, for example, we call about civilian. Sati. But this is, in other words, the question of value. The word Madani is open to different meanings, and it depends on the user of that. And this way is significant for the discussion that I'm going to have. Yeah, but not just purely we are concerned the etymological meaning, and of course there is also in the case of Rabi, for example, he uses the word Madani a lot. He uses also the word for his in his writings, Madaniyah, yeah, Madaniyah to mean civilization. For example, he has one book titled ESEA al-Madaniyah, which means literally it can be translated as politics of civilization. Politics of civilization. And it is interesting that Samuel Huntington used the phrase politics of civilization as the title of one of the chapters of his book, The Clash of Civilizations. So that's etymological meaning. Now, the other one is conceptual meaning. Conceptual meaning has to be related to the history, to the historical context, the philosophical context, right, as far as concepts concerned. So this is where it is very important to take note. And then Al-Farabi was the first person, the first scholar to conceive of the word, the concept of Madani. Now, he was a student of Greek political philosophy, and Farabi was considered as the founder of Islamic political philosophy, or the founder of political philosophy in Islamic civilization. So in the course of his studying Greek, he knew Greek, as I explained in my book on the life, works and significance of Farabi. He studied Greek in Constantinople, the old Istanbul. So he was very much interested in Greek political thought, and so he translated the Greek word Zun Politikon into Arabic as Al-Hayawan Al-Madani, political. Some people translate that as political animal, but the moment when you use the word political, that brings in issues raised precisely the question of why did he use the word Madani to translate Aristotle, basically Aristotle's use of the word Zun Politikon, meaning Haywan Madani. So basically in bahasa it means that manusia pada sifatnya adalah haiwan madani. Yeah. And ini diulangi. This is repeated by Ibn Miskawayh. Ibn Miskawayh is basically almost a contemporary of Al-Farabi, because he was born when Al-Farabi died in 950. Ibn Miskawayh was born. Was already 14 years old. And Ibn Miskawayh stated the same thing: man is by nature a Madani animal. Now, but if you, and as sometimes I have argued also, rather than use the word political, I use the word civilizational. Madani as translation of the English word civilizational. So man is a civilizational animal in the sense that he was created with a nature to create civilization, and basically civilization covers the range, the meaning, many things. All right. In other words, even the word political itself is understood by Aristotle and by Aristotle as a kind of that tendency of human beings to cooperate with one another for common interest and also for in the case of species for their survival. So, but of course, there are degrees of civilization, there are degrees of Madani. This is clear. Yeah, there is not just one level of Madani when we talk about Madani as civilization. Students or the scholars of civilization make it very clear. You have different kinds of the qualities of civilization, different qualities of urbanization, and refinement, cultural refinement. Okay, now what is the essential or central to the Madani idea is cooperation in the pursuit of various aspects of the survival enterprise, because there are animal species, then that basically have a certain kind of social organization, even among the non-humans, like insects, like bees, ants, and so on. There is a level of organized cooperation in their work activities, in their leadership. There is basically a committee, and this is what the Quran emphasized. The Quran emphasized in Surah Al-Ma'idah, the one of the verses in verse 38, if I'm not mistaken. In every instance, there is the animals that are found on the earth, the birds that fly, they all regarded by the Quran, by Allah SWT as this umamum means the ummah, the communities. So I think the question here, an animal species has that trait of being able to organize themselves and for their various purpose. So that's central to the meaning of Madani and civilization. There is cooperation. Human beings cooperate with one another in pursuit of various, of course, not just question of survival. So what makes the human civilization, human Madani, different from the animal Madani is precisely the quality of that of that pursuit. The different, in the case of human beings, you're talking about the highest pursuit of civilization. But the concept is found in the Quran itself, so it's no problem for Al-Farabi to see that. In other words, cooperation, we have the word ta'awun. Yeah? So ta'awun is expressed. Yeah? Of course, I mean, there's not just cooperation among the Muslims, but the Muslim philosophers universalize the idea of cooperation in order to include among different groups of the humanity. Okay, let me go now to the next slide. Yeah. So basically, you may want to ask, what are the things characterized as Madani? In others, at the hands of the Muslim scholars, Finnish writers, when they use the word Madani, to what things do they apply? Well, first of all, any socially organized species, including the human species. They use that. Yeah? So man as a Madani animal attains various degrees of civilization complexity and refinement. Secondly, to community, state, to ummah, society, city-state. Yeah? So that's why in Malay we have masyarakat Madani. So you're using the word Madani applied to masyarakat. We have umat Madani. So the word Madani can be used to say Oman having certain characteristic, and Negara Madani. So we have Malaysia Madani. So that is not wrong. In order to use that Madani to a nation, to nation state, or to city to state. Yeah. What's important now? What are the features? What are the characteristics that are given to that negara, which entitle it to be called Madani? So, if people want to criticize, not to criticize that the word Madani is used, applied to Negara, but the question is whether the characteristics are reasonable or not. I mean, are justifiable or not. They should do that, and then we can open up a very good debate, a healthy debate on that. Now and of course, and I mentioned here, for example, Al-Farabi's Al-Madinah, Al-Fadila. That book, that popular book in Islam, for the last, talking about more than 1,000 years ago, then that is a work. There's a classic work on Madani issues. Classic work on the meaning of Madani, the theory of Madani, all right? What should accompany Madani, the Madani order, Madani issues, right? Then, of course, yet another thing to which the word Madani has been applied is academic discipline, science, and this was done by Al-Farabi himself in his book Ihsa al-Ulum, the enumeration of the sciences. The Al-Farabi used the word al-ilmu al-madani, al-ilm al-madani, which has been translated various ways, but I prefer to call it civilizational science, or science of civilization, ilmu ketamadunan. This was in his book Al-Farabi's enumeration of the sciences. So this I find these are the three important things to which the word Madani is used to categorize that. Let me go now to the okay. I want to discuss a little bit here about Al-Farabi's theory of Madani science as embodying the meaning of Madani, the significance of Madani. It is, in other words, it can speak. This theory may be used to understand all that pertains to Madani issues. I think it's because Al-Farabi's theory, what I call of Madani science, the science of civilization, is significant, not only for his time, but also for subsequent periods in Islam, and even until now. So I think it is good. It is a good thing to refer to Al-Farabi in order to understand the conception of Madani. Now, the first thing that I find, that I can see looking at the subject matter, or looking at what he describes about the science. So in the enumeration of the sciences, Al-Farabi presents the subject matter of this new science. He was the founder of that science. Others who have contributed to that science, of course, the most important after him, Ibn Khaldun. Ibn Khaldun basically improved on the Al-Farabi's science of civilization. So it is not true that Ibn Khaldun was the founder of a science of culture and civilization. But what Ibn Khaldun did, he broadened the meaning of civilization, so that in a sense, Ibn Khaldun's concept of a civilization is very, very broad indeed, to include not just urban civilization. Farabi basically was interested in urban civilization, but Ibn Khaldun was interested even in the Badawi, the Bedouin civilization. He not say that the people who live in the rural areas, the people in the deserts were not civilized. It's a question of degree of civilization. So one feature about Farabi's theory of modern science that will prove helpful to us is the inclusive nature of the theory. Inclusive nature of the theory, and this is what we need. So the inclusive nature of the theory befitting the cosmopolitan nature of Islamic civilization. Al-Farabi observed the cosmopolitan nature of Islamic civilization during the time of the Prophet Muhammad himself. What is meant by here is that Islamic civilization is inclusive. It opens itself for other partners in civilization building, civilization construction. It's not. It is for all citizens. It's for all citizens, for all groups that live together. They are together to build civilization, basically the Prophet was able to do that because of the inclusive nature of his teachings, the universal nature of his teaching. So the inclusive nature of the theory of Madani, therefore, what I mean here, an inclusive conceptual framework and structural elements. For example, he talks about the theory of happiness. Yes, he has his own preference, his own understanding, but the way he presented the theory of happiness is that it is inclusive. Nobody, no human person rejects happiness as something good, as something that should be pursued. But what happiness means to different individuals, happiness means different things. So how to attain that happiness is also varies from person to person. But he talks about within a particular civilization, you have different kinds of individuals. But he does say, of course, that everything that humans do actually is because, whether they are aware or not, is because they are in search of happiness. Even though they do not think so, maybe they do not think so, but actually underlying that, everything that a person does is because he is in search of happiness. Others may think that no, that is not the way to happiness, but the person thinks that is his way to happiness. So in that sense, in other words, he talks about the theory in neutral terms, not. So in other words, so that everyone can accept, that the theory of happiness is very, very important to civilization construction. Same thing about the pillars of Madani societal order. So we talk about pillars. If you look at Malaysia Madani, there are six pillars. The first pillar is sustainability. That is a neutral term in the sense that people have different understandings of what sustainability is. But then every Malaysian, no, every Malaysian, for example, should have no objection to sustainability, because it is a good idea. We can have differences regarding its meaning, but there are common meanings that we can accept, and also common approaches and methods of how to realize that pillar. But some pillars that are not there. For example, I look at what Ibn Al-Farabi has mentioned. So what pillars of Madani? I mentioned already just now, ta'awun, yeah. But for Madani, there are more fundamental pillars. For example, tafahum, mutual understanding. In terms of a multicultural society, that is very important pillar aspect of Madani. Yeah, mutual understanding. Ta'aruf, this mutual acquaintance. This is because it's based on the Quran. In other words, God has created us and in different ethnic groups and so on, so that we can understand each other. So the idea of that ta'aruf, yeah, that mutual acquaintance. I mentioned that ta'awun, but Al-Quran also mentioned tasabuh, which is a healthy competition. There is also a pillar. Yeah, we must have competition. It is natural inside to have competition, but that competition must be healthy. Now, the other one is now one interesting feature of Al-Farabi's theory is now he basically universalizes cross-cultural pursuits of the meaning and content of Madani. Yeah, so that enables, I think, for him to initiate a dialogue, discourse with others. So his theory was basically universal. His approach is universal. The question of Madani building, the how. Yeah. So we have the theory. Basically, the first part of his sign is the theory of happiness. And they need to identify the content of Madani, the content of civilization. But the question how? Basically, question of organization, how to organize, what policies should be adopted in order to make sure that what we are seeking will able to be delivered to the people. So regarding this how, Al-Farabi refers to the need to distribute things. Yeah. Basically, he's asking how should we distribute things that are good and desirable and that will lead to happiness. He used in the term for his time in his context the theoretical intellect. That's why he affirmed what he called the theoretical values. Yeah? The theoretical values, the theoretical intellect, the theoretical intelligence. That purpose, that human intelligence is to identify, to understand what are the good things, what are the desirable things, and also will lead that will lead to happiness. And he mentions beliefs. I mean, we must have beliefs in a civilization. We must have ethics. We must have virtues. We must have law, education, even technology. So Al-Farabi here is talking about happiness not in the individual sense, but he's talking about group happiness, civilizational happiness. So in others here, Al-Ghazali came later after him. Al-Ghazali was talking more about individual happiness when talks about the alchemy of happiness. His framework was individual, but Al-Farabi is very interesting that not many have followed him in his thing, but it is good for our times. Yeah? It's something very interesting for our times because in our times we emphasize more on societal pursuit, our collective pursuit rather than this individual. So, so the question here, in other words, Al-Farabi believes that it is possible to attain happiness through society, through our activities in society. In this respect, Al-Farabi shares common ideas with Confucius. Confucius is another thinker in a different context, different civilization, but he believes, in other words, that it is possible through our social work, through our societal engagement, to go, in a sense, to transcend the earth, to reach the heavens. Yeah, basically how to be linked. That relation between that bridge between earth and heaven may be crossed through our. We may climb that ladder, if you want to use that word. We may climb that ladder through civilizational activities. And this is what the same argument presented by Farabi. In fact, during the launching of the book dedicated in my honor, I mentioned about the mathematical ladder. That in Islamic civilization, mathematics used to be a ladder to climb, to ascend to the world of metaphysics. Yeah? To go from physics to metaphysics through mathematics. But I also pointed another important ladder, which is through politics or through Madani. So the Madani ladder, and Al-Farabi believes that in his writing, he talked about the link between society and metaphysics and theology, and Madani becomes the concept that provides that bridge between the two. So in that context, that he understood the idea of philosopher king of Plato in the sense of being equivalent, or to be identified with the prophet and lawgiver. In other words, he talks about Prophet Muhammad as the philosopher king. In other words, he was a philosopher, but he was also in the Sharia, in terms of the Sharia interpreter. This is very important to civilization. All right. So so basically the question, the how is, we know what are the goods, what are desirable, but it comes to the practice. I mean, wish to be implemented first. So there are priorities. There are priorities that need to be observed. How to distribute things. So that depends a lot of factors. But these are all issues. These are all Madani issues. So Madani issues, as a guide, is very important for Malaysia, for example. We agree many things that need to be done, but a lot of things also we need to ask which comes first, which needs to be addressed first, because things have their own turns, their own places. Now, another thing is, of course, when we question how to achieve this Madani building, the importance of leadership, that was made clear by Farabi in his description, and he even talks about political education. Very interesting. Farabi talks about the necessity of political education to ensure that we sustain Madani values across generations. So the role of knowledge-based leadership. So as far as Farabi is concerned, he talks about knowledge-based leadership. So his criteria of leadership in his book, Al-Madinah Al-Fadila, it's quite clear. I mean, first of all, what kind of qualities, leadership qualities, should be found in individuals, and if there's not to be found in one individual, then there should be group leadership, and therefore the importance of institution of shura consultation as indicated by the Quran. So sustainment, the question of sustainability in how to sustain Madani values. Today, I don't think we are, many of us, yes, we have come across the word now, Madani, but if I ask you, what are the Madani values that are now should be understood, should be gathered, grouped together, and how these values, of course, to sustain through across generation means through education. It is education that helps to sustain these marine values for future generation. Okay, then I now come to the basically the what is really meant by the title of my talk tonight, Madani within a religious framework. Okay. I want to talk first about Madani within a religious framework. It is only proper that we should talk first about Madani within a religious framework, and particularly in the case of Islam. Why? Well, firstly, the first point, we have to talk about the Greek legacy of Madani discourse. We began with Farabi. He inherited that from Aristotle, from Plato. Now, the significance of Plato and Aristotle in Islam is not the same as in the Christian West. It's not the same. Aristotle and Plato were regarded in the Christian world, in the Christian West, as pagans, but not in Islam. Not in Islam. Even Al-Ghazali in the Tahfud al-Falasifa, yes, he has many things that he criticized, but there are a few things that he mentioned. That basically the thought of Aristotle and Plato was Tawhidic in nature. In other words, these two Greek thinkers believe in the unity of God, believe in the unity of God's attributes and qualities. So basically, the spirit of their philosophy was Tawhidic. And for this reason, the writings of the two scholars had no problem to be for the Muslims, for the Muslim thinkers, including Farabi, Ibn Miskawi. They have no problem of incorporating, of integrating the political thought of these Greeks into the Islamic into Islamic thought. Yeah, so I think therefore historically, philosophically, the concept and philosophy of Madani did not bring problems. And what more, that legacy could be in instant harmonized very easily with the concept of prophethood in Islam, the concept of prophethood in Islam, and the idea of the city, that the city of the prophet, the the Nabi, the city of the Prophet, as a source of inspiration. Yeah, Al-Farabi and other Muslim thinkers were influenced, were inspired by the Madani of the Prophet as a city that should serve as a model for a future for the future Islamic civilization. And when the Prophet established the first Islamic civilization in the city of Medina, and that served as the model for later cities, Muslim cities. So that's important, not only in theory, in the theoretical discourse, but there's something practical. In other words, there was a practical model provided by the Prophet, yeah, how a city, how a civilization, basically, in the light of the Quran, can be established. So this is the second consideration, yeah, about the question of the religious framework. So in others, the Prophet did not divide between the sacred and the profane, between the spiritual and the secular. Such a division did not exist. It was a unity. The city provides a kind of unity in terms of how civilization is to be looked at. Now, the third point here to be noted is that in Islam there was a spiritual interpretation of Madani science. Again, there was no kind of division. Yeah. So what Madani science is, the way it was formulated, right? The formulation of Madani science was done in accordance with the spiritual interpretation. There was link between the earth and the heaven, between human society and God, yeah? And basically, what Al-Farabi, for example, was arguing is that we know very well that Allah has many names and qualities. The natural scientists pay their attention to the manifestation of God's qualities in the world of nature. And therefore, with the question of governance, the governance of the world of nature. But then we have also the human world, the human world, where the question of it involves question of civilization building. It requires different human attributes in culture. Then so the how to link that? In other words, if we read the Quran, then Allah reminds us of whenever talk about social phenomena, the human phenomena. It talks about justice. It talks about the compassion, mercy and compassion, forgiveness. So he talks about his own qualities, but as applied to society, human society. So this is what I mean by the question of spiritual interpretation of Madani science. So it is possible to have a spiritual understanding of a good human society. Then the next point is the question of the Sharia as the foundation of Madani building. Yeah. The Sharia provides many rules, both big rules and small rules. But anyway, the Sharia is the foundation of Madani building, and the Sharia is a divine law. The Sharia is the divine law. Yeah. yeah, it is rather unfortunate that in the West, that the Sharia as understood in Judaism, for example, and Islam, is missing. Yeah, it's missing after the Saint Paul basically uh, in the the Judaic law, the Judaic law, the law of Judaism is supposed to serve as the to be preserved, yeah, by Christianity, but that was terminated. So what we have general general moral principles, but not Sharia as a kind of that system which uh, provides the means, the ways and means of organizing society. Uh, and of course, finally, talk about the inclusive nature of Islamic civilization. So all these things, um, right from the time of the first of the city of the Prophet in Medina, and then through later on as Islamic empire expands, right? It was the Sharia that provide the principle of the principle of empowerment of Madani building. So in other words, basically, in history of Islamic civilization, Madani has always been conceived and discussed within a religious framework. But now let's see Madani with a secular framework. So if we look at the history of the Madani, so the Madani idea had a religious origin, had a spiritual origin, a philosophical origin. Yes, philosophical, not in the secular sense, but philosophical, that is religious or spiritual. So the Madani idea did not have a secular idea which later became religious. On the contrary, the Madani idea had a spiritual origin, religious origin that later became secularized among certain in certain parts of humanity. That was the case. That is important to take note of. Yeah. So later, it was later that the Madani idea became secularized. And you are talking about hundreds of years, that process of secularization. That process of secularization of politics and political thought. Yeah. Basically, it was a response to the Western tradition itself. Basically, it was an internal thing, that process of secularization. So what we saw was an epistemological transformation that is reductionistic in nature. Yeah. In other words, many ideas related to Madani then were furnished by religion. Yeah? The main structural elements of Madani, for example, as furnished by religion. Yes, they are largely retained by secularism until recent time. So it's not so much the form of the Madani here that has changed, but rather how but rather the the appreciation of that Madani, the understanding of that Madani has changed. Yeah, has changed. That change has happened because of a change in epistemology, theory of knowledge, the question of new attitudes towards God, towards spirituality. In others, how the understanding of reality, the worldview has changed as a result of that secularization process. So it's as if like, well, the skeleton of the body is still there. Yeah, it's still there. So when Madani, basically Madani has become civil in a very, very narrow sense. That's why civil society in English has been translated into Masyarakat Madani. That's why the treatise by John Locke, the what you call the content of the civil government, for example, the civil government, and that's in Indonesia. That word Madani has been, that word secular, the modern word civil has been translated into Madani. But then that meaning of civil as understood today is not the same as the meaning of the word Madani when it was formulated by Islam. So there was that gap. So it's not correct. Yeah. So in other words, yes, that thing is there and it's in front of us, but in reality, the original meaning of Madani is no longer. It's a big gap. It's no longer the same as the meaning of civil as understood in modern times. Yeah. But my argument, I would like to argue, and this can be debated, and I would like to see this debated. Nonetheless, secular values, to the extent that they are accepted by many people, may exist. Secular values may exist within an inclusive Islamic interpretation of Madani that encompasses the whole of the societal or of civilization. Yeah. So this is a proposal, a claim, and it can be debated as I said. Yeah. Here, for example, this is a serious thing. This is practical thing now, practical issue. Say in Malaysia, there are many people with secular values. They may not want to see the intrusion of Islamic interpretation of Madani. But I think the best thing, let's talk. Let's discuss. Because there can be many Islamic interpretation. So the question is it possible to arrive at a more inclusive Islamic interpretation of Madani, in which those, say, who don't believe in God, those who don't in God, for example, in the hereafter, but who want to be good, to remain good people. So how can we do that? And that's going back to Al-Farabi just now. I said because Al-Farabi talks about Madani in a kind of neutral language, religiously neutral language, talks from the more inclusive perspective. Then yeah, we come to that situation. Okay, right? If you do not want to accept the Islamic, the spiritual interpretation of Madani, fine. You can carry on with whatever your understanding is. But I think there are many principles of Madani which are good. I mean, which I see no reason why they should be rejected. Yeah. But then the acceptance of that is the manner of acceptance, the context of acceptance may be different. Now, basically, we want to go to an inclusive Madani social order. That's what this is what it means. In other words, for Datuk Anwar Ibrahim as the Prime Minister, yeah, what he is doing, what he's proposing to do, what he's interested to do, it's basically towards an inclusive Madani social order in which every Malaysian has a place, has a place. But Muslims who, and certainly I want, in other words, I'm in favor of an Islamic interpretation, but universal and inclusive. I think yes, I think that's what the challenge is. So there is a need to present a conception of Madani that is universal and inclusive. My argument, it is possible to arrive at such a conception, intellectual dialogue, but intellectual dialogue between groups with different belief systems is necessary. Yes, my concluding remarks. An inclusive Madani for a culturally pluralistic Malaysia is a possibility, but the challenges to its realization are immense. But inshallah, with Allah, we will make progress. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Brother Professor Fauzan.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now is time for us to discuss, dialogue, and maybe question and answers. And I open the floor to the in the Zoom. Then later I'm going to read the question from the chat. Any question from the Zoom? Please unmute or raise your hand. Anybody? If not, I'm going to read. Noordin asked question in the chat. Even Dr. Alinor have questions. Or should I read from the chat? Okay, this going to this only statement, and I think from Noordin. Okay, Prof, is there also influence of Aristotle, Nicomachean ethics beside Plato's Republic in the concept of Al-Madinah, Al-Fadilah toward Al-Farabi? How to make Farabi's idea about philosopher king relevant to the current era of democracy? This is one question. Then second question, Prof. Osman, this is a brother from Nick. Prof. Osman, how are we ready for Malaysian inculcate Madani values and long-term mission? Then from Noordin again, can you explain about many modern Jewish scholars who are more interested in discussing foreign Madani concept than modern Christian scholars? Is it because Jewish scholars are less secularized in understanding the concept of Madani? I guess three questions first. Then I will go back to Brother Ahmad and Brother Shazani.
Professor Fauzan, regarding the first question, regarding the sources that influence Al-Farabi in writing his book, Al-Madinah Al-Fadilah. Now, I've argued that Islam as the last religion, the last to be revealed, means that it has a function, a role to play, namely synthesis. So one of the reasons for the existence of Islam is to provide a synthesis of truths to be found in the previous religions and and the newly revealed religion. So that spirit of synthesis was somehow followed by Al-Farabi. So I wrote in my work on Al-Farabi that he created synthesis. He was able to synthesize philosophical ideas, whether it is in politics or it is in ethics and others, from the Greek sources and other Oriental sources, in others and of course the Quran and the Sunnah. So basically, when it comes to the concept of Madani, Al-Farabi synthesized ideas of Plato and Aristotle from the Greeks and the Quran and the Prophet's Sunnah hadith. So that's what he did. That's what he did. And he was able to do that thanks to the principle of Tawheed, which is able to integrate truths from different sources. So the important role played by Tawheed in that synthesis is very, very important. So I just gave Madani as one example of that. Now, we are not in the 21st century. We live in Malaysia with many different religions. For example, yes, we should have dialogue with them on this issue of Madani from the perspectives of the different religion. In particular, I find very interesting about Confucianism. I already talked about it. Yeah. In other words, there is kind of Chinese Madani in the writings of Confucius. I repeat, there is a kind of Chinese Madani. What it is? Well, okay, let's discuss. Yeah. Yes, different ideas, but expressed in quite differently in another from another culture. But it is possible to come to arrive at some form of a common language to understand these ideas. Especially, I said just now about the idea of Madani ladder to link heaven and earth, basically to link the world with the spirituality. And in this Confucius, in his books, in his writing, I think it's quite. If I can say this. I mean, it's quite encouraging to talk about a dialogue on issue on Madani with Confucianism. Now, the other question, of course, what was that, Prof?
Why Jewish scholars discuss more about Madani rather than Christian scholars, Al-Farabi?
This is very interesting. Historically, the influence of Al-Farabi among Jewish thinkers was immense. Yeah, I can tell you indirect influence on the Samuel Huntington. Samuel Huntington was aware actually of the many of the ideas of Al-Farabi through Maimonides. Maimonides is the greatest Jewish thinker. So Al-Farabi was very much influential in Spain, in Andalusia. So that's why he was well regarded by Ibn Rushd and also, of course, by Maimonides. Yeah? Jewish thinkers have high praise. Jewish political thinkers have great admiration for Farabi. So the Farabi's work were translated into Latin. See? So if you want to understand John Locke, somebody should do research. We should trace the sources that influence John Locke. Actually, the one reading this book on the civil government, the civil government, actually it's not secular. It's not as secular as today understood. I mean, he still accepts many teachings of Christianity. His interpretation quite still philosophical but religious. Philosophical but religious. So it's only later on that really that we have a different kind of secularization, but not John Locke. Yeah, although I don't agree with many of his metaphysical statements. Yeah, if seen from the perspective of Islam. So you took to your question, why among Jewish thinkers? First, because the Tawheed. Yeah? In other words, when it comes to the issue of Tawheed, there's the law of similarity between Judaism and Islam. And then question of the role of the philosopher king, the political dimension of that. So you have many biblical prophets who in sense who belong to that category, that they call the philosopher king. Yeah, the philosopher king. So the idea of philosopher king survive until we have the last philosopher king, that is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The role of the Sharia. Yeah. So Judaism has a sacred language. Hebrew, like Islam, which has a sacred language, namely Arabic. That's in terms of sacred language. And then the question of law. The Torah is basically law. Yeah, that's the importance of law. So that again, Islam is in agreement with Judaism. Where we are divided is politics. It is politics that divide Islam and Judaism, Muslims and the Jews.
Thank you, Prof. Osman. Now we have Brother Ahmad Salih, and next is Brother Shazni Masri. And Father Ahmad Salih, your question, please.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
From
barakatuh.
Indonesia, which city, Akhi?
I'm in Michigan, USA.
Wow, Michigan, mashallah. I thought in Indonesia. Okay, go ahead.
So, yeah, I just wanted to maybe thank Dr. Osman Bakar for his clarity and always his great guidance to not only the Malay world, but the Muslim world. And we greatly admire his thinking. And I'm thinking when we speak about John Locke and also John Locke's influence on Jefferson, and we know the book Jefferson's Quran and how he was many of the ideas of the American Constitution came actually from much of his from Jefferson being informed by some of the great ideas coming from Locke and George Sales and many other people. But I like to think that our understanding is always informed by, like Dr. Bakar said, by spirituality, religion, and politics. There's one way always to synthesize that in a very healthy and constructive way. Of course, there's always the continuum of civilization, but everything must be hinged on informed hope and informed optimism. If I look at the word Madinatul Fadila, Fadila from the word Fadl, and the word Fadl is grace, and in grace, the English language, the word grace could be courteous, goodwill, elegant, refinement, and also dignified presence or healing. We speak of a graceful society and God's grace and so on. And so I think that I'm very uncomfortable with the word happiness, because even the word sa'ada doesn't, it's not the richness of sa'ada, and fadl do not really translate into happiness. The word happiness has been bastardized and cheapened and sabotaged by the World Economic Forum and others who want everyone to own nothing and be happy. So I think maybe something more to the idea of fortunateness and falah, which also includes salvation in the afterlife. But if I look at the city of the Prophet ﷺ, we find that there was a coexistence between the rural and the city. There were palm groves within Medina, and the Prophet used to go and visit some of those palm groves, Bayraha and so on. And I'm worried about the upcoming smart cities, the 15-minute cities, the megalopolises, where it will be, we don't have the green spaces, and could lead even to greater enemy and greater depression, greater anxiety, surveillance, control, technocratic states, etc. But the challenge we have in the West now, and we can also see with the fight between Putin and NATO, is also a challenge of values, because Putin and the Orthodox Church stands against wokeism, stands against Satanism. And a lot of times WHO, United Nations, they are masking their agendas. Here in the US, we use $11 trillion on the COVID saga, and that $11 trillion could have eliminated poverty throughout the world, could have eliminated lack of sanitation that caused disease throughout the world. So I think it's important just to emphasize values and virtues, And if Malaysia has to look at the word inclusion, they should not include wokeism or gender fluidity or transgenderism. WHO used to see transgenderism as a mental disease. They've just taken that off. And we always need to look at the dark side. Education often becoming propaganda, courts and law becoming captured, politicians becoming captured, Malays and Indonesians losing their sovereignty, whether it's national or individual sovereignty. So I think it's always, as the Arabic saying, وَبِالْأَضْدَادِ تَتَبَيَّنُ الْأَشْيَاءِ, we often through the opposites recognize certain things. So I want, if it's possible, this is more like a comment, but if it's possible to see where Malaysia will stand when it comes to this whole woke ideas. BlackRock would say you go woke or broke. And will Malaysia say, fine, there are limits to inclusivity, there are limits to certain things, and we are not going to stand for these type of highly surveilled places that uses the word, the catchwords inclusivity, but actually just degrade society and a devolution of religion and Sharia.
Thank you, Brother Ahmad. Good question from Michigan. And Prof. Osman, before you answer from Brother Ahmad, I think I'm going to read the question from Megawati. Prof, do you think the concept of Madani will be more acceptable in Malaysia among the non-Muslim communities? We also focus on Greek philosophical origin contexts, which are basically Tawhidic and universal in nature. Thank you. So there are two questions, one from Brother Ahmad, one from Megawati. Thank you.
Hello? Yes.
Yes.
From Brother Ahmad Masali, it's not really a question. I mean, I think it is a comment. So, well, there are many things to do, but yeah, I think the only thing is we should, pay attention towards the lot of developments that are going on that have civilizational implications. Yeah, the implication. I think referring to the world events, the current events now. I mean, without a proper direction, without being guided by something more fundamental, we can just get lost. We'll be lost in the current political discourse. So, but anyway, I don't want to go into that. Yeah. The other question is in terms of the readiness to accept the idea of Madani. This is something new for many people. It's something new. The term is the etymology. It may not be the thing that you want to do. Yeah, it's not. Because I think there are many things that people accept already, but the issue now is we want to integrate all these good things within one perspective, one theory, one policy, the new Malaysia policy. Yeah. So we know very well that every prime minister of Malaysia has his what I call Islam policy. Islam policy. But in the case of Datuk Ibrahim, this is the first time that, in other words, then although the origin of the word is from Islamic civilization, but he wants to universalize that idea so that it is acceptable also to the non-Muslims. And so non-Muslims should not really should be afraid, should fear the terminology, but rather look at the meaning of that, the content. What's more important, the content of the policy. Yeah. So to the extent that the concept is very good, yeah, the ideas embodied in Madani are good. So we believe that it will bring a greater goodness to the Indonesian people. It will bring, it will bridge differences. In other words, what I can see is that the concept of Madani can be the platform for Malaysians of different religions, different ethnic groups, culture, to bridge to bridge that that influence. But that cannot be attained overnight. Yeah, this is question of discourse. It's a question of dialogue. So if we are sincere, if we open we are more open, mind, more transparent. I think the true ideas will prevail. Yeah, the ideas that are beneficial to the majority of people that will win. That will prevail. So, but this is still new. Yeah, it's still new. Let's go on having a discussion. Let's say, for example, the first pillar, the first rukun of Malaysia Madani, which is sustainability. Now, I'm sure if you survey the Malaysians on what they understand by sustainability, it can be quite a range of meaning. But why it's important at the end of the day is what? What is important is land has have a more holistic idea. I call now kemampanan sepadu. In other words, holistic. In other words, when we say sustainability, we are not only referring to environmental sustainability, we're also referring to this cultural tradition. In other words, tradition is an important element to sustain our society. Yeah, if we lost our tradition, if tradition are to disappear, then there'll be no sustainability. Things keep on changing without going anywhere. So tradition is important to sustain our civilization. Of course, we distinguish between good tradition and bad tradition. Traditions that have to go, and traditions that are worth defending, because that is one important element of sustainability. So yeah, I think that's my response to Sister Dr. Megawati.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Osman. We have actually 2 questions, but I don't know whether we want to proceed or we can answer later. Because now 10 o'clock, Prof. Do you want to proceed with 2 questions?
Yes, please.
Okay, this question from YouTube, Brother Bukhari Silas. The concept of Madani in its inclusive meaning, as presented by Prof. Osman, synonymous with secularism, in a sense that it is neutral way to encourage coexistence in multi-ethnic societies. This first question, and then the Sister Dr. Sheila Ainun, Assalamualaikum, Prof. Can Madani science philosophy be implemented within 5 years, i.e. within the tenure of the ruling government? Should we set up Madani Institute to implement this philosophy? Yes, I think then I think the last question I'm going to read from the Ashmat Saleh from Michigan. Should universities require studies of Islamic philosophy, politics, maqasid for all professional school thinking in high virtue opportunistic leaders depend on non-thinking, uninformed citizens to run reigns and terror and dictatorship? So I think 3 tough questions for you to answer before we go to sleep. Thank you.
No, I'm not sure. I mean, I thought it's just a statement by Brother Ahmad. It's not a question.
Okay. So the first
question.
Yeah. Okay. How about the question from Bakar Silas? The concept of Madani is inclusive meaning as presented by Prof. Osman, synonymous with secularism.
No, I don't agree. I don't agree because I think different.
Coexistence in multi-ethnic societies.
Yeah. I think there are two different perspectives. Spirituality and secular perspective are two different. Yeah, or even religion or secularism. The question of inclusiveness. The question of inclusiveness. So, if the secularism cannot expect, cannot agree, cannot accept for example, the Islamic perspective, yeah, on the Islamic religious perspective, the spiritual perspective, then how can we say that it's inclusive? Yeah, for secularism to say that it is to accept inclusivism, it means it should include ideas which to include ideas which are accepted by, say, not only by Islam but by the other religions. So the question of inclusiveness, but I can point to a kind of inclusiveness in the case of in Islamic interpretation. All right. In others, what do the secularists want? What do the proponents of secularism want? Yeah. In terms of what they hope to achieve to be good citizens, for example. I think Islam, and take Islam an example. We have no problem no problem for them to practice their secular values. Yeah, but then they can reject, they can object to the worldview, the vision of Western Muslims want to attain through education, for example. So this is different, yeah, different perspective of looking at things at Madani, yeah. But anyway, it's difficult for a session like this. Let us have a discussion. In other words, has a real discussion regarding that point. Yeah, but I don't agree. Yeah, I don't agree with the idea that secularism is the more inclusive democracy view. The other one is a question from was that Professor Fauzan?
Yes, the other one is just suggestion whether if we can implement Madani within 5 years.
Yeah, no, you cannot achieve in 5 years. Yeah, in a way. What is important is to realize then it is a good concept. There are many things, good thing about that we can do. Just proceed. Of course, for example, education, the role of education. Yes, I mean that you do not know the idea that every time we have some policy, new policy, then immediately we say, oh, we must set up one institute. It's as if that one institute can do the miracles, To me, yes, we can set up, but not thinking so much about the time, the period. It is what's important is that different institutions that exist now, they can play their role in trying to explain the idea concept of Madani, what sort of things that need to be, what sort of projects, agenda that need to be utilized in order to give meaning, to this agenda of Malaysia Madani. So that's my response to Dr. Sheila. Yes, you can, but the point, even if you cannot perform and establish another new institution, there are many institutions. ISTEC can do, for example, IIS can do, the Yakin can do. So it's just that now it's just focused, give new focus to the agenda called Madani or Malaysia Madani. Yeah. But I want to distinguish between the two. Yeah, one is a concept and philosophy of Madani as such. The other one is the Malaysia Madani, which is the policy of the government. My argument is that that government policy is not going to make way, much way if not strengthened, not supported by the theory, by the understanding of that concept Madani itself. All right, 6 pillars. Yeah, okay, concentrate on the 6 pillars of Malaysia Madani, but they are related. The effective realization of these 6 pillars are related to other pillars, and other pillars. Yeah, the Malaysian government has to be selective because it is a public policy. The government cannot implement all the pillars. Yeah, but there are the 6 important pillars. If we succeed, we don't have to wait for 10, 15, but if we can succeed in explaining and realizing the 6 pillars as practical agenda for the community, for the country, I believe we have done a lot, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Prof. Osman. Alhamdulillah. And to answer also Bukhari's Silas, I think I want to refer to Suratul Hujurat verses 13, ayat 13, where here Allah's statement that we are in multi-ethnic societies, where all mankind, we have created you from male and female and made you into nation and tribes, and that you may know one another. So this is the statement of multi-ethnic societies. And verily the most honorable you with Allah is the believer who is at-taqwa, yani God consciousness. And verily Allah is all-knowing or all-aware. So Allah knows what's going on and where what's going on. I think Prof. Osman, I think that we can end this tonight. 10:10 is more than 1 hour and a half. 1 hour 40 minutes is heavy, great, serious discussion. For sure, I agree with you. We're going to continue the debate, discourse, or discussion on this Madani because it's involved, and as you said, it's not going to take just 5 years. It's a civilization. The whole civilization, inshallah, we're going to establish based on the 6 pillars. Yani is the sustainability, then C, care, compassion, then R, respect, I, innovation, P, progress, and T, trust, or Madani in Malay, M, kemampanan, A, kesejahteraan, D, daya cipta, and A is hormat, and then the I is ihsan, care and compassion. So with that, we close with tasbih, kafarah, and surah al-as. Subhanakallah wa bihamdika ashhadu an la.
Recording stopped.
Astaghfirullah.